time to die rehearsal, take 7, action.
I would like to tell you that Land Rover's story is one of pure automotive innovation, but that would be oversimplifying a tale of survival, transformation, and reinvention. How did a makeshift agricultural vehicle, sketched in the sands of post-war Britain and built from surplus aircraft aluminum, evolve into a $30 billion luxury empire that sells 450,000 vehicles annually? What started as a desperate attempt to keep a struggling company afloat became one of the most remarkable brand transformations in automotive history, morphing from utilitarian farm equipment to the preferred transport of royalty and celebrities. Through economic collapse, multiple ownership changes, and near-death experiences, Land Rover's journey from muddy fields to Mayfair boulevards is a story of relentless reinvention. To understand how this agricultural workhorse became a status symbol, we need to travel back to the mid-1800s, where a bicycle company's unlikely pivot would lay the foundation for automotive history. In 1885, when John Kemp Stanley unveiled the Rover safety bicycle, he unknowingly wrote the first chapter of luxury automotive history. The design was so revolutionary that in some Eastern European languages, the word for bicycle still derives from rover, an early hint at the brand's future ability to define entire categories. Rover's journey from bicycles to battlefields was one of constant reinvention. By the early 1900s, they had evolved into motorcycle production, even supplying the Russian army during World War I. But the 1920s brought the company to its knees. After hemorrhaging money, Rover abandoned motorcycle production in 1924, surviving only through government intervention, a pattern that would echo throughout its history. The true turning point came during World War II, when German bombs destroyed Rover's Coventry headquarters. Operations concentrated at their Solihull Shadow Factory, a government-funded facility that would later become Land Rover's birthplace. In post-war Britain's desperate landscape of steel shortages and export crises, two brothers would transform crisis into opportunity. Morris Wilkes, a farmer using a surplus American Jeep, complained to his brother Spencer, Rover's managing director, about the lack of agricultural vehicles. Their solution was brilliantly pragmatic: create the farmer's best friend, using surplus aircraft aluminum and leftover fighter cockpit paint. This desperation-born innovation would exceed all expectations. While Rover projected 5,000 units of their stopgap product, they sold 8,000 in the first year alone, doubling that the next year. By the late 1950s, this makeshift agricultural tool commanded over 90% of the 4x4 market in Australia and much of Africa. A vehicle designed for British farmers had become the go-to choice for everything from African safaris to Middle Eastern oil exploration. But this was just the beginning of a transformation that would redefine luxury itself. By the 1960s, Land Rover had mastered utility, but a subtle shift in consumer psychology would transform their destiny. The vehicle that conquered muddy fields was about to attempt its most daring journey, the leap from tool to treasure. This metamorphosis began with a secret project that would rewrite automotive luxury: Velar. The 1970 Range Rover emerged from this project as an accidental masterpiece. In a twist of automotive irony, its iconic design wasn't crafted by stylists, but by engineers who created a purely functional body for testing. When the design department saw it, they were so struck by its utilitarian beauty that they barely changed it. Sometimes, the most enduring style comes from pure function. The 1973 oil crisis proved providential. As wealthy buyers sought more practical vehicles, the Range Rover offered the perfect solution: luxury without ostentation, capability without compromise. But success bred crisis. By 1975, British Leyland, Land Rover's parent company, faced such financial turmoil that government nationalization became inevitable. The brand that began as Rover's salvation was now keeping Britain's entire motor industry afloat, while Japanese rivals like Toyota's Land Cruiser began eroding Land Rover's global market share with superior reliability, the company made a fateful decision. Instead of competing on dependability, they would double down on luxury. The 1981 four-door Range Rover, complete with leather seats and wood trim, marked this definitive pivot. Remarkably, unreliability became part of the appeal. The more problems Land Rovers developed, the more exclusive they became. Only the truly wealthy could afford their upkeep. By decade's end, average prices had risen 200%, transforming a farmer's tool into an aristocrat's toy. The company had discovered an counterintuitive truth. Sometimes, imperfection can be the ultimate luxury. This transformation would set the stage for even more dramatic changes in the decades to come. But first, the company would have to survive the tumultuous 1990s, a decade that would see it change hands twice and reinvent itself yet again. The 1990s opened with Land Rover facing an existential paradox. The brand that once dominated 90% of the global 4x4 market was watching Japanese rivals steadily erode their territory. Enter BMW, the precision-obsessed Germans who saw potential where others saw problems. Their $800 million purchase in 1994 would trigger one of the most fascinating cultural collisions in automotive history. What followed was a masterclass in the limits of engineering perfection. BMW poured nearly $3 billion into modernizing Land Rover's ancient factories and developing new models. The result was the second-generation Range Rover, P38, a vehicle that perfectly embodied the clash between German precision and British character. For the first time, Land Rover wasn't competing with other SUVs, it was challenging luxury sedans on their own turf. But the real revolution came from an unexpected quarter. The Discovery, launched just before BMW's arrival, became Land Rover's secret weapon. Sales more than doubled from 23,000 to 47,000 units by 1998, proving that luxury could be accessible without becoming common. Even more radical was the 1997 Freelander, Land Rover's first vehicle without low-range gearing. Purists were horrified, but the market was enchanted. Yet behind these successes lurked a perfect irony. Despite investing billions, BMW couldn't solve Land Rover's fundamental quality issues. One executive famously quipped, "We're not running a car company, we're running a warranty claims processing center." In 2000, after 6 years and $3 billion, BMW sold Land Rover to Ford for $1.5 billion. But BMW's brief reign had fundamentally altered Land Rover's DNA. They had proven that the brand could command premium prices despite its flaws, turning what should have been fatal weaknesses into exotic character traits. Sometimes, the most valuable transformations come not from fixing problems, but from reframing them as features. As the millennium turned, Land Rover would enter yet another chapter under Ford's ownership, but the transformation that began under BMW would continue to shape its destiny. The question was no longer whether Land Rover could be a luxury brand, but whether it could maintain its off-road credibility while pushing further upmarket. The answer would come from an unexpected quarter: India. When Ford paid $1.5 billion for Land Rover in 2000, they weren't just buying a car company, they were purchasing a paradox. Here was a brand that languished at the bottom of every reliability survey, yet commanded some of the highest profit margins in the industry. It was a puzzle that Ford, with its mastery of mass production, was convinced it could solve. The timing seemed perfect. The luxury SUV market was booming, with wealthy buyers suddenly viewing rugged vehicles as status symbols. Ford placed Land Rover in their premier automotive group alongside Jaguar, Aston Martin, and Volvo, a British jewel in an ambitious luxury crown. But they were about to learn an expensive lesson about the difference between fixing problems and embracing contradictions. Ford's greatest insight wasn't in solving Land Rover's issues, it was in learning to market them as features. The 2002 Range Rover, launched using BMW's engineering but Ford's money, embodied this philosophy perfectly. Priced at $50,000, it wasn't positioned as a luxury SUV, but as an alternative to the Bentley Continental GT. The message was clear. This wasn't just a car, it was a social signifier. But the real masterstroke came in 2005 with the Range Rover Sport. Built on the Discovery's platform but styled to look like a Range Rover, it offered the cachet of the flagship at a lower price point. Critics called it cynical marketing. The market called it genius. The Sport quickly became Land Rover's best-selling model, with waiting lists extending months. The transformation of Land Rover under Ford is perhaps best illustrated by a single statistic. In 2000, the average transaction price for a Land Rover in the US was $43,000. By 2008, it had climbed to $63,000, a 46% increase during a period when the luxury market as a whole grew by only 15%. But Ford's impressive stewardship would come to an abrupt end. The 2008 financial crisis forced the American giant to sell its luxury brands to raise cash. In a twist that would have seemed impossible a decade earlier, the highest bidder wasn't a European luxury manufacturer or American private equity firm, it was Tata Motors of India. The sale price of $1.7 billion represented a modest profit for Ford, but the real value of their ownership period was in positioning. They had taken a troubled British manufacturer and transformed it into a global luxury brand. The quality issues remained, but somehow they had become part of the mystique. When Tata Motors acquired Land Rover for $1.7 billion in 2008, the automotive world scoffed. How could an Indian company known for making $2,500 cars possibly steward a British luxury brand? But Ratan Tata, the patriarch of the Tata Empire, saw something others had missed: the power of embracing contradiction. While previous owners tried to fix Land Rover, Tata decided to amplify what made it unique. The results redefined automotive luxury. Under Tata's stewardship, Land Rover's value skyrocketed from $1.7 billion to an estimated $30 billion. But the real genius lay in their understanding of luxury psychology. The 2011 Range Rover Evoque embodied this perfectly. A Land Rover that couldn't really go off-road, had minimal space, and cost as much as a proper SUV. By traditional metrics, it was everything a Land Rover shouldn't be. It was also an unprecedented success, selling over 800,000 units and attracting a new urban, fashion-conscious clientele. Tata had grasped a fundamental truth about modern luxury: scarcity creates desire. When they launched the 2022 Range Rover at $250,000, territory previously reserved for Bentley and Rolls-Royce, the waiting list stretched beyond a year. The company delivered fewer vehicles than in previous years, yet made more money. They had mastered the ultimate luxury equation: selling less for more. Today, Land Rover commands average transaction prices of $98,000, higher than Porsche, with profit margins exceeding 30% on some models. The company that started by sketching a vehicle in the sand has become the architect of modern luxury, proving that sometimes the most unlikely transformations create the most enduring legends. In Land Rover's journey from muddy fields to Mayfair boulevards lies a profound truth. True luxury isn't about perfection, it's about character.